Yo, what's going on, guys? C2 Wrestling podcast back, and we are rolling. Third podcast in a row. This is where you start making it a hit streak. When you get to three, when you get to four, when you get to five. Snowden, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. We are on a streak. We're rolling. This is great. I'm loving this. We were talking in our last video about how much fun this has been. Just over a week of podcasting, talking wrestling, interacting with the few fans we've made so far, and it's been great. I want to keep it rolling. We got some topics to get into today, some hot topics, and I'm looking forward to it again. How are you doing? You tell me. How are you?
I'd be doing better if my work was done. It's kind of like, when you're a kid, it's football season, and you've watched football all day, and it's now the Sunday night game, and you've reached like late third, early fourth quarter of the Sunday night game, and you still have homework to do, and you feel like the day just flew by, and you're like, oh man, this sucks. That's what I feel like right now.
Yeah, that is a shit feeling. That is not
Yeah.
great. That is
Yeah.
not great. But I'll tell you what, I was never doing that homework anyways. So,
To be
but
fair, I was sleeping in class.
yeah, oh yeah, big time, big time. But we got again a lot to discuss today. We got a few things to get into. Some news in the wrestling community, a certain tour of sorts by a certain wrestler that we'll be touching on today. But why do you start us off? What do you want to get into?
Look, I've mentioned him in previous videos. I've been on social media. I keep seeing the Ricky Starks talk. And I'm a big Ricky Starks fan.
Mm-hmm.
He has always been someone that not only myself, but I feel like a large majority of people, as soon as he started to really gain momentum in AEW, they were like, this guy is like textbook WWE. If there's anybody to go from AEW to WWE, it's always been Ricky Starks. And I keep seeing it all on my timeline. And, Ricky kind of toys with it, tweets and deletes things, whatever. But I can't get over how much I think a perfect match Ricky Starks is for WWE on any brand.
Absolutely, I agree, and we agree a lot. I feel like over our six or so videos we've put out, there's a lot of agreeing. But how could we not? Again, I think you kind of just said this. I think the casual audience agrees here that Ricky Starks, the guy's made for WWE. Let's be real. Even when AEW first came around, first started, and there was the pillars of sorts, the four pillars. Ricky Starks was always like a bit above them to me. He was always kind of like my guy for AEW. There's a few others over there, don't get me wrong, but something about Ricky Starks, man, he's built for WWE. And not that they'd even go this route, but obviously he has ties with Cody. Man, a pairing of them, a feud of them. Like there's just so many matchups you could do already. You can say that about a lot of guys, a lot of girls. I get it. But Ricky Starks is something special, man. I really think he could be big in WWE. And I don't want to generate hate. This is not even a diss at AEW or anything in that realm. But Ricky Starks is one of those guys that, unfortunately, maybe missed the curve a little bit, man. When he went to AEW, imagine he was a late addition to the black and gold era of NXT instead. He could be something special right now. I know there was a lot of drama within WWE at that time and a lot of cuts and stuff. So who's to say he even makes it through? But star power shows, and I think he has that.
To be fair, Cody played a big role in bringing him into AEW and has really given him the chance to shine. And he just hasn't been on. I mean, there's a bit of correlation between him not being on and his last feud with Edge and Jericho, and also him being at Mania. Whether that is something or isn't, might just be a coincidence, might just be, the whole story. Who knows? I hate to say this because I know immediately people will almost get the ick at this, but I want to see him in NXT. And like I know he'll do great on the main roster. I'm not worried about him going to NXT and being there too long. I'm not worried about that. I just think he's such a good fit for his character to go down to NXT and immediately be a top guy.
Yeah, for sure. I think NXT would be fantastic for him, actually. And not everybody has to go to NXT. The recent Jacob Fatu, Tonga Loa, all these guys. Not everybody has to go straight to NXT, but some guys with star power, even going to NXT, is great for them and WWE, NXT, everything. Think back, black and gold era of NXT. Countless names. I don't even got to name any. Countless names were called up during that time frame and butchered because there was a big disconnect between NXT and the main roster. Vince. It is now under the control of Triple H and Shawn Michaels. It's a different world now. I think they are on path, if not there already. We were at Stand and Deliver. It was fantastic. Arguably some of the best in-ring matches that whole weekend were at Stand and Deliver. They are back in a realm of where they got this black and gold feel again. It's not necessarily what it once was. There was that 2.0 buffer, but imagine now having somebody like Ricky Starks with a big debut in NXT. He gets that Bobby Roode spotlight, that Shinsuke spotlight for a little while, but then actually gets a proper call up to the main roster. We start seeing these guys transition to the main roster properly. And we already have with Braun Breaker and Ilya and Carmella and Carmelo, so many other wrestlers, even Lyra, Valkyria, she's been on TV a lot since coming up. Tiffany, of course, I think it's great for the company overall to have somebody like Ricky Starks start slow, NXT bound, doesn't need a year-long run, few months, a title, good feud or two, get them up.
With them going to CW on their own, like they're gonna try to make NXT big. They're gonna try to make
Mm-hmm.
it because they have to get the ratings. I mean, the first two shows, they've already announced Punk for the first show and Orton for the second show. So it's not like they're not bringing out the big guns for some of these shows. Granted, I don't want them to become too reliant on having these big names from the main roster come down. But if Ricky Starks went to NXT, I mean, he's immediately into the main event scene, similar to Ethan Page, just immediately
Mm-hmm.
into the title picture. And who knows? Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 8 months. Some people forget. I know this was basically a different world at the time because Vince was running it. People forget Drew came back and went to NXT first, even though
Stellar
he had
run.
already been on the main roster. And it was a very short period just to kind of slowly ease him back in. He was not there for long. And it was a great thing for him. He won the
Yes.
title. He had great matches. Granted, was his call up and pairing with Ziggler great? Probably not. But again, Vince running it, not Triple H. Hard
Mm-hmm.
to make this an exact correlation. But there's something in me that can picture the WWE machine getting behind. Like, I just start thinking of Ricky Stark's entrance, for instance. And I just picture how WWE operates, the lights going out, a perfect spotlight onto him. He hits his pose. I'm sure he'll get some god awful theme music that he
The
shouldn't
star.
have.
Yeah.
And he's going to be an instant impact, instant star,
Mm-hmm.
and someone that truly could be like carry the brand for 6 months, main event scene, feud with Trick, whatever. You could do anything with him. You can have him heel,
Mm-hmm.
you can have him face. And then after that, you bring him up. And I think right now, who knows when, if he does get signed, when it would be, you'd probably incorporate him in NXT when a lot of these rivalries and stories are finishing. So it would be a perfect timeline.
Yeah, it would be. And you mentioned briefly in the beginning there Ethan Page, who was really the most perfect comparable example of what they could do with the Ricky Starks, who Ethan Page has always been great, was not even as big of a name as Ricky Starks is in AEW. Ethan Page, they had debut, turn him into a mega heel, win the title, has been fantastic so far, an absolute star. He's going to be something. Ricky Starks, in the same light, like you said, the entrance, the pose. We just recently talked about in our recent video about the Lucha Bros, a potential debut coming to WWE. And we had mentioned in there how the Zero Fear merch is going to go hard for WWE. Man, I think Ricky Starks is going to eat up that merch line as well. Anything by him, I think a babyface Ricky is going to go over big time. I do think we're also going to get weird, Ricky Starks theme. They're going to say his name before he comes out or something, something corny. But NXT Bound is an interesting idea to me. I am for it. There's so much going on the main roster right now, too, that where do you squeeze him in? What do you have him do? Where do you fit him? I just seen before this recent episode of SmackDown, people online, oh man, where's Giovanni Vinci, man? They bust. They already aren't using him. Wow, might as well release him. 6 hours later, SmackDown night, Giovanni Vinci vignette. You know, they have to fit these guys in when they can. They're not just gonna uproar storylines to like squeeze somebody in somewhere unless it really, really, really makes sense. There's a timeline to these things. If Ricky left AEW right now, we might not see him debut on the main roster till the Rumble. But you can put him on NXT next week, and it's a lot easier to make sense out of
A Rumble debut would be pretty cool,
it. We fire.
and just he goes to NXT after. Like that is not like just because he debuts at the Rumble doesn't mean he would have to immediately be on the main roster. I mean, look at Jordan Grace. She showed up at
Yep.
the Rumble, went to NXT. Jordan Grace is also an interesting name because she's supposedly going to be a free agent in January. You assume
Mm-hmm.
she's WWE bound. You assume she probably goes to the main roster instead of NXT
Mm-hmm.
because of all the names NXT's getting. But I just feel there's only so much TV time. The main roster has so many big stories that are taking up a lot of that time. Not saying Ricky wouldn't easily slide in and get a good 15 minutes on Raw or something like that. It's just much easier to find that time for him on NXT, a brand that often goes over time. Again, we don't know when they go to CW. They
We'll
might
see.
not. But there's less constraints on it. Sometimes they go like 20 minutes over.
Yeah.
You're talking a 2 hour, 20-minute show that they can easily find time for him. And also, depending on the timeline, you could have it where he's debuting at the same time as a Julia,
Mm-hmm.
as some of the new signings. And it's this kind of new wave into the new era, using air quotes for those that are listening, the new era of NXT. Now, if you told me, hey, they're going to sign Ricky Starks and he's going to debut on SmackDown, like I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to
Yeah.
be very happy. I'm going to be very excited. And I'm immediately going to start fantasy booking and probably instantly drop a video on it.
Yeah.
I just think Ricky, a short stint in NXT, again, emphasis on short. I'm not asking for him to be there for 2 years. I know he's not in his 20s anymore, but a short stint in NXT, I think would do him and do the company wonders.
Yeah, it absolutely would. You mentioned there too, there's only so many slots. I get it. There's 3 shows, but there's only so much time. And we know how this internet wrestling community is. If Ricky debuts in NXT, there's going to be people, oh my God, this is crap. They didn't put him on SmackDown on Raw. Why would you not do that? But there's also going to be people that if they debut him on SmackDown, that are going to be complaining like, ah, oh, man, we didn't get Pretty Deadly tonight. This sucks. But if you want to fit Ricky in, Pretty Deadly might lose that time slot. Somebody out there is going to lose that time slot, until they can work it all into, again, a proper feud. There's a reason Giovanni Vinci was off TV for a matter of weeks, probably waiting for a time frame where they can debut him properly, get him into a feud that makes sense. You don't want to just throw these guys on. Ricky to NXT, I think lines up. I think they have to, in all honesty.
I'm all for it. I think we can. It's probably easiest to do a video on it alone once it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what we need extended time for is the main topic today of tonight's podcast, and that is the John Cena farewell tour. And I'm personally glad that we really didn't talk to each other beforehand on like, let's hit this, let's hit this, let's hit this, because there is endless
Mm-hmm.
opportunities with Cena and this farewell year-long tour where there's so many talking points. It's kind of tough to even pick where to begin, but I guess the perfect start since the year-long farewell tour starts in January, that starts with going to the Royal Rumble on February 1st and the road to WrestleMania. So this farewell tour, Cena, I would assume, is in the Rumble. What are you doing with Cena in the Rumble? I would venture to guess he doesn't win, but it's not outlandish that John Cena would win the Rumble this year.
Man, it's really not actually. And if there was ever going to be somebody to win a third Rumble, tying Stone Cold, Cena's up there. That's really it, maybe, you know?
Maybe
I,
Cody in a few
yeah,
years.
maybe Cody in a few years, maybe if this you asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said Roman. But I don't think him winning the Rumble is necessary. I think you can use the Rumble as a tool to set up a future feud for him. Mania, this being potentially his last Mania, considering he said it's a 2025 farewell tour. Pretty sure he stated he's done at the end of the year, indicating he won't go into 2026, won't be at Mania 42. Little strange to me. I don't know if his final match is going to be a tribute to the troops. Like, I don't know what he's aiming for, ending in December, to be honest. But it's also pro wrestling. Cena might be having a ball. He could extend this run. Who knows? I don't think he does. I think Cena is very clear in what he decides to do. I do think this is a strict end. I don't think we get a Cena comeback match in 10 years. I think he's done. But his last Mania, Mania 41 in Vegas, you already have guys like Cody locked down. You got Roman, The Rock locked down. He already faced a Theory. I don't need to see him face some people he's faced 100 times, except Randy Orton. For me, Mania 41, that's the match. Cena versus Orton. I don't think a title needs to be on the line. I don't think Cena needs to win the 17th title at Mania. I think he can get that title at a different event, makes that event more memorable. Imagine him winning at a Backlash or a Bad Blood again. It's a more historic moment for a not big four pay per view. I know we've seen this match 20 times. People might disagree, but Cena Orton, I think I need it one more go.
See, I do disagree. I don't need that at Mania because it's a year long. You have so much time
Mm-hmm.
to do Cena Orton, do Cena Styles, do Cena Rollins, all the Cena Punk potentially. These are massive matches. To me, I think those massive matches are where you put them on the lesser pay-per-views that aren't the big four that immediately skyrocket them and make them not that they're not must see right now, but if you told me we have Bash in Berlin coming up, let's say we're a year ahead right now and they're doing Bash in Italy, whatever. If you told me Cena versus Orton for the very last time is happening on this show automatically goes up by 10
Mm-hmm.
instantly. WrestleMania doesn't need that. I think WrestleMania is the perfect spot for him to, I know people don't like it, but this is where, when he lost to Theory, this is where a match like that makes sense. And I think the two most logical are pretty obvious to most. Either him versus Gunther going for that 17th title, or him versus Braun Breaker going for the I already forgot what
Intercontinental.
the Intercontinental Championship and becoming a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah,
That
I do
to me,
think.
those two guys, they get that rub.
Yeah, I can totally see that, and I get it. Gunther Cena match and a Braun Cena match are Cena can have 2 matches on this tour or 50. Those are must happen matches. Braun IC title. I personally I get it. I understand there's a story there. Oh, I want to be a Grand Slam champion before I'm done. I don't need a Cena going for the IC title story. I think a just him versus Braun match can do just fine. But I also don't want to see Braun lose that title yet. So if it happens to be for a title, putting Braun over Cena, it's fine. It works out in the long run. Gunther, I feel like, is also another guy though that has so many options at Mania that where do you really put him? What's the best? He very well can go against Cena. Does Cena beat him? Do you have Cena win his 17th against Gunther? I mean, he's only lost to a few guys, losing to Cena. Nothing wrong with that. But part of me doesn't think Gunther should be a guy losing to Cena. He's still one of the GOATs, but he's older now, man. I can't help but view it as he's not the same version of what he once was. We should not get a undefeated 50-0 John Cena farewell tour. He's got to lose some matches, most of them, in my opinion. Put some people over, win a belt, get a little run, call it a career. I understand the pick, though. Gunther, Braun, I ain't mad at either of those.
See, I don't think Cena wins a title in this farewell tour.
Yeah, I could see that also happening just as easy. I don't know if he wins a title. Yeah.
I just don't know if, for one, he would even want that.
Mm-hmm.
And for two, if it really makes sense for him and for the company. Like,
Yeah.
granted, this is John Cena. This is the greatest of all time. The last thing Cena wants is these nearsighted people thinking him taking a title off of one of these new guys devalues them and is, you know, more so doing things for Cena because he's Cena, whatever. I don't think so. If Cena won the IC title or won the world title, I'd be fine with it. I love Cena. It's This is his farewell tour. Whatever the hell he wants, do it for him. I don't care. But I understand not mortgaging and taking the risk of what you have with a guy like Gunther or a guy like Braun Breaker and having them lose to Cena just so Cena gets his moment. In my mind, look, I don't know Cena personally, but I would assume he thinks in his head he's already had his moments. He's had tons of them. And being tied with Flair is perfectly fine. I don't think there's an absolute need to have him break it. And this
Mm-hmm.
is coming from, like, to me, Cena's the GOAT. I grew up on Cena. Like, that's
Yeah.
my guy. I didn't grow up on Hogan. I wasn't old enough. I didn't grow up on these other people that they argue. Cena is my guy. I don't think he needs it. And I think it's just fine if he's tied it. To be fair, him tying it felt like a pretty great moment. Him breaking it, it's like you're almost not booked into a corner, but you're almost like, say he beat Gunther for the title at Mania 41. As a fan, you're like, all right, well, he's either going to drop it in these next few months, guaranteed, or he's just going to relinquish the title and it's going to be vacated. And at that point, that does nothing for anybody. So that's where I'm like, I don't think he's going to win a title in this final run because the end date. And it would be weird to start a reign knowing this is going to stop in the near future.
Yeah, I think he also doesn't need a title run. But if he's going to get it, I will not be mad. Of course, I will not be mad. If he's going to get the title run, though, I think there's a way to do it. And I don't think it's by beating a Gunther. It's by beating a Braun. I think, man, if you ran back, I don't know how you do it, but if you get a world title on CM Punk and run back the Money in the Bank match at Money in the Bank, I think putting a 17th belt on Cena, if he beats a vet like a Punk or an Orton for it, goes over better overall with the crowd than beating a fresh Braun Breaker, Gunther, these guys that are, I mean, Gunther's a little bit older, sure, but these guys that are younger to the company, newer, fresh, have a lot coming for them. Cena's a little notorious for taking away from some potential runs we could have gotten growing up. I would have loved a Wade Barrett title run.
That was exactly what I was about to
I
say.
would have loved a Wade Barrett title run. But I think we're past that. I think we very are much past that. I highly doubt Cena's going to Triple H begging to beat a fresh Braun Breaker for the IC title. Again, previously we mentioned those slots in wrestling. We were talking about Ricky Starks filling a slot. Cena also fills a slot, megastar or not, he fills a slot. Are you just gonna, like, in the middle of this mega bloodline storyline, uphaul the whole story to put the belt on Cena? Not really. You got to make sense out of it. And if they can't make sense out of him winning the 17th title, I don't think they'll do it.
To play devil's advocate to what I was saying before,
Mm-hmm.
there is a piece of me that although I don't want him to beat Braun Breaker, I would love for Braun Breaker to have an incredible run as Intercontinental Champion. There is a piece of me that thinks if we're doing the Cena retirement tour, I almost feel like there has to be a Cena Open challenge every week. And
Yeah.
I know they did it with Flair on who's going to retire him. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to do something similar towards the end. But if Cena won the Intercontinental title and you told me Raw for the next 7 weeks is going to have the Cena Open Challenge and he's facing these young guys, like just think of what it did for all of those guys getting TV time, having great matches. I mean, it instantly established Kevin Owens when he ended up essentially stopping the Open Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
That,
Sammy.
yeah, exactly. Sammy, Cesaro had a great match. Neville had a great match. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was it was the best part of Raw for that
Mm-hmm.
entire time period. There is a piece of me that it's like, all right, I don't see it happening for a world title. So it'd have to be for the Intercontinental title
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to have him win the US title again. There is a piece of me that is like a John Cena Open Challenge 2.0. I can get down with that.
I can absolutely get down with that. In fact, I will go on a limb and mark my words. I will say the first episode of Raw on Netflix, I think we get a John Cena Open Challenge. Obviously, it won't be for a title, but man, how else do you start off not only Netflix Raw, the John Cena Farewell Tour, you get a open challenge from Cena, and that is your perfect opportunity to have a fresh Braun Breaker, Ilya Dragunov, Bronson Reed, a fresh name, except the Cena Open Challenge. Cena can even go over in that. It's okay. That's an open challenge debut spectacle on Raw. A Cena match, a Roman match, a Brock match on Raw, that is like must see TV. Doesn't matter what happens, you know? I think a Cena Open Challenge on Raw, we're going to get at least once. I would love to see him win against, say, an IC title and give us a few more weeks of that Open Challenge run. I do also think, I will just briefly say, Cena's going to be a quote unquote free agent. He's going to be floating around a bit. Don't don't get it twisted. We're getting a Cena NXT match, I think, down this line too. I would be surprised to not see a Cena Trick interaction. This might sound crazy. A Cena Joe Hendry interaction.
I mean, that writes itself. We know Cena kind of played a decent part in the Trick
Mm-hmm.
Williams Carmelo Hayes story when, Trick has the backstage interaction with Cena asking when he knew it was his time, whatever. The CW has NXT on its own. To me, it's obvious you're getting one or two, at least one or two appearances from Cena to bump those ratings. I don't know I can't remember the exact week that they're head to head with NXT, but if that's in
Yeah.
2025, if that happens again in 2025, bet your bottom dollar Cena's going to be on that show. I did see, I want to say he has like 50 something dates.
Mm-hmm.
At the very worst, he'd be once a week for the entire year. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's like he's going to be around for the entire year. I think it's, when a pay-per-view's near, he'll be on a few episodes in a row and then the pay-per-view, then maybe off a week or two. It's not going to be oversaturated by any means. I was going to ask you which brand he makes more sense on, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's almost like you have no choice but to have him be a free agent.
You have no choice. You can argue Raw because that's the flagship 3 hour show. SmackDown's been winning the ratings for a while now. So is SmackDown really the A show? But NXT, it's on the come up. Why not put him there? I think you got to have him do the free agent route for a little bit. I think you would be like kind of, and I'm normally way against, so far against like the free agent, even a Brock. I hated it. Him being on, like, put him on one show. Doesn't matter to me. If we're splitting brands, we split brands. but there's only a few instances where it makes sense. And with John Cena's farewell tour, it makes perfect sense. As you mentioned, 50 dates. We'll see. I think the main pay per views from Mania to Backlash to Money in the Bank, the Big Four to Bad Blood are all going to have Cena matches. I think Saudi is going to invent a new number in order to pay WWE to get John Cena on these shows. So it's likely we see him in the Saudi events, the main shows. I think we're guaranteed a Raw or SmackDown match here or there. Even some live shows, perhaps. Maybe those are counted in. I kind of hope not, but a Madison Square Garden live show on a Saturday night is like a given. Cena showing up, I feel like that's gonna happen. I would like to see him on TV as much as possible. I don't know if he's going to be filming movies in between all of this. I don't know what that schedule's like for him. He does seem committed to just WWE for the year. He pumped out a bunch of movies over these last 2 or 3 years. So maybe this is a little pause from Hollywood for him as well. But it would be a shame to see him once a week, in all honesty. I know he's getting there in age, travels, maybe even not the greatest anymore. Obviously, he can't go in ring full 20-minute match every week, but I want to see him on TV as much as possible.
Something just hit me. I think the only way they could get away with him not being a free agent is timeline wise. All right, he's showing up the first Raw January on Netflix. I guess you could have him be on Raw for the first 5 months of the year, and then you're going to get the draft, which would it's probably going to be around 2 weeks later than it was this past year, which was the end of April. Now with Mania moving back to the middle of April, I think the draft is more likely to be in a May time period.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not outlandish that you have Cena on Raw specifically for 5 months and then goes to SmackDown for the final 7 months of the year. I mean, that's not outlandish, but I mentioned we were talking before, like there's so many big names. My only thing with those big names is it's almost as if we're going to get there's not enough time to do like actual stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so like the history of these guys. Say it's a Styles or a Rollins, whatever. We don't need them to start a brand new story that Styles attacks him from behind and in a month they're
Yeah.
gonna fit. We don't need that. I think the only route, because there's so many people he has to face, I'm normally not a fan of this, but we only have a year. I think it's literally going to be like, hey, 2 weeks, you're getting John Cena versus Seth Rollins for the final time. Make sure you don't miss it. And that's it.
Yeah. I think we'll get very like cookie cutter. Cena's out there giving a promo and, a heel Rollins sure interrupts him and, then they have a match next week. And that's what it's
Yeah.
going to be. Again, it's not going to be some 2 month build to a match. Um, I mean, I guess you never know, but I do not expect that either. I think that's fine though. Again, we don't need it. Cena's there for a year. There's gonna be a lot of great matchups, but he's not gonna face them all. There's gonna be a couple people that were like, man, he should get a match, but it might not happen. There's some names you can write off automatically. There's names out there that unfortunately we know probably ain't getting to see in a match in his farewell tour. But it does lead me to ask not only you, but the C2 Wrestling audience. Comment below. Three. Give me three names you must see Cena face. Now, we have mentioned Gunther and Braun. Those are must see, so I want to take those out. This is technically a top five. They're already in there. Give me three more names. Who does Cena have to face in this farewell tour?
Has to face. Uh, the first name. Look, every time you put me on the spot, I always have to say the first thing that pops in my head. The first name that popped in my head was Carmelo Hayes.
Love it. Yep.
And I think, as I mentioned before, the story writes itself already
Mm-hmm.
because Carmelo already has his character of being cocky, arrogant, I'm better than you type character. But Carmelo very well could look at Cena and be like, you ruined my friendship with Trick Williams. You are the reason of our splitting because of you getting in his head, telling him that in that backstage promo many months ago. The story's already written in a very short time period to where you can have it make sense and it just be a quick month and a half story between the two. And I think him getting that matchup would be huge for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after that is where I'm going to have to start thinking through the roster because you already
Yeah.
said Braun Breaker and Gunther will slip to the side. I don't want to think just heels, but the next name that pops in my head is probably their hottest heel, and that's Dominic Mysterio. I would
Okay. All
I
right.
would
All right. All
love
right. All right.
I think that instantly writes
Hot.
itself of the crowd. John, I mean, is there anybody in the world who gets a reaction like John Cena for the last 20 years and
So
the opposite for Dom?
let me just say there's never really been a bigger baby face than Cena. Cody's there, I get it, but like it's current. Cena, that's top dog baby face. Dom, his heel status is an all-time heel status. That crowd back and forth, Dom and Cena, that really is a must-have match. I almost didn't really consider Dom, to be honest. It just wasn't a name that immediately came up for me. Has to happen. Before you get to your third, Carmelo was also one of mine. I've been praising Carmelo since the second I found out he was a wrestler. He is, in my opinion, the most total package wrestler I really think of all time. Said and done, Carmelo is going to be the greatest to ever do it. Him versus Cena really does write itself, and it would be fantastic. That is, again, one of my choices as well. Let me hear that number three, though. Who else you got?
Number three, look, I'm trying to think of people that might be unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't, I'm not including Punk. I'm not including Styles. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not including Orton because odds are we're probably going to get,
Gonna get
even
those.
Rollins, we're probably going to get them in some fashion. And then I started thinking through names and I, after we finish this part, I do want to discuss Cody and Cena
Mm-hmm.
and what could potentially be with them. There are some names where I'm like, I would like to see Cena team with Damian Priest on a random Raw to,
Mm-hmm.
give him that kind of rub. Maybe a Sammy or a Jey Uso, whatever. Getting those multi-man matches, so those like super over baby faces, similar to when he teamed with LA Knight. Super over baby face gets you know, the credibility and the notoriety of being in a match with Cena. But the last person I wanted to say Bronson Reed, but I don't really know if I necessarily need that. I mean that's probably where I start to lean the more I think about it. I feel like there was another name that I now can't think of. So I'll loosely say Bronson Reed and try to remember the name that I was
Okay.
thinking and throw it back to you for your three. I know you
So
said Carmelo already.
yeah, Carmelo Bronson, I think is an intriguing name. I also love Bronson, always have. I think his look, his style, the tsunami is like total package, incredible. So him versus Cena is intriguing to me. I also agree. As much as I would like it, I don't know if it breaks my top five. Let's say, considering we got Gunther, Braun, Carmelo, or three. You also had stated you don't really want to say a Styles or a Rollins or a Punk because those are almost obvious names. Even with that, Punk is like has to happen, has to. I also too am trying to like get away from that, say some more uncommon names. Carmelo, Ilya, another recent call up would be my next choice. I think his just style would mesh real well against Cena. Maybe a heel Ilya would do a little bit better in that storyline. But my third name, which I want to touch on a little bit more, it's maybe a hot take name actually, because this might come as like an oddball name. I mentioned the potential John Cena NXT match, and I think if you really want to push this 25 whatever year farewell tour and up and coming stars, you're putting Cena up against Javon Evans. on NXT TV.
Ooh,
That's a
wow.
good one. I think that's a good one.
That's very good.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
would
you're
love that.
you're you're talking about someone who Javon Evans is so young that
Hmm.
he is like for when we were kids during, we'll call it Purple Cena, Fruity Pebble Cena,
Yeah.
we were more middle school.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, like I loved the Miz. I was a big Miz guy.
Yep, me too. Yep.
Javon Evans is a couple years younger than us,
Hmm.
where like he's almost like he's a very young kid during that
Yep.
era, where he is. I don't look. I don't know him personally. I don't know his background, but he very well could have been the wristbands and headband, Cena kid in
Kid.
the crowd.
Yeah, I think I forget exactly the context, but I seen Javon Evans in some recent clip mentioned something like when he was growing up as a kid, when he was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, like it was the Nexus era or whatever it was. Where for us, when I was 6, 7, 8, Eddie was pinning Brock at No Way Out. Like it's different eras. So it is very interesting to see that potential wild style that is Javon Evans. John, a big fan, Javon Evans towards John Cena against this, older, grounded, maybe more technical Cena. I think Cena could put Javon Evans over wonders. Being in the ring with him and acting, seeing the stuff Javon Evans does and being wowed by Javon Evans in the ring as he's in the ring with him, I think would put Javon Evans over the moon.
I think it would be a big mistake if they didn't have at least 1 to 2 matches of Cena with NXT people. And look, he absolutely like wins those matches. I'm not saying Cena's got to go down
Yeah,
there
and
and eat a
lose. Yeah,
pin from Tony D'Angelo,
yeah.
but him, no disrespect to Tony D'Angelo, obviously.
Love you, Tony D.
But yeah, of course, love Tony D. Just the first name that came to my mind. But Cena, like it would be a big mistake if Cena didn't go to NXT at least a couple times and at least have one match. And again, it could be kind of how I mentioned it before, where it's a tag match and he's teaming with maybe a Joe Hendry or a Trick Williams or
Mhm.
whatever. And the heels that he's facing, an Ethan Page or whoever else it may be, Cena is the focal point, but all these guys get the rub just being in the same match as him. It would be an extreme miss
Mhm.
to never have John Cena in his final year go down in what he's essentially done for the last few years and is focused on putting over the newer talent. Like it
Yeah,
would be an oddity for that not to happen.
absolutely. I'll even say, as much as it is an obvious thing that's going to happen, Cena at a minimum showing up in NXT. To have him not show up in NXT, man, that's the point of this farewell tour in a way, is to put over talent. If you're not going to have him show up in NXT, you might as well cancel Christmas. That's kind of the
Yeah.
point of this tour.
Yeah.
Get him down there, put over some young talent. That's really what Cena's here for.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think. I can't remember the third name that I thought of, but Dom I feel like
Dom is a great name. Dom is a
is
great,
a
great
is a
choice.
great pairing for him
Hmm.
and makes sense. I do feel like there also needs to be like it doesn't have to be this person is a heel, so they'll get the
Yeah,
chance to face Cena. Like I feel like heels and faces almost get thrown out of the window. All right, when it comes to their promos and the build, sure, but you don't need to specifically be a heel or be a face to go against Cena in this farewell tour.
yeah,
I mentioned it. I want to talk about it because I do think it's an interesting topic. Cody Rhodes, who you most would say he is the face of the company. He's the
absolutely.
guy. He's the main event. He's
100%.
he's the one signing autographs, kissing babies. He's doing what Cena used to do. He is on the Cena schedule. You know they're going to be in some aspect cross paths at some point. The question is, do you necessarily need a passing of the torch? Like to me, Cody's already got the torch. And when he won at
Yeah.
Mania 40, Cena helped him, Taker helped him. So, yes, they're going to have something at some point, whether it be a promo, whether it be a tag match. But I've seen some people mention, like, oh, maybe you have Cena versus Cody. I don't need that at all. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if you told me they don't have anything more than just a random promo together at some point, I think I'm okay with that. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah, it's funny you say it because you really beat me to the punch. I don't need it. Out of all the big Cena marquee matches, CM Punk, Orton, Rollins, Styles, Cody Cena's the one I need the least, in all honesty. I think if that match were to happen, it's throwaway on Raw. That is not the put it on pay per view one for me. That's not the. I don't even need it to be a title match, even though it probably would be. Let's be honest. Don't really need the Cody Cena matchup. I think it would almost be more fitting to maybe like I don't know, maybe at SummerSlam. Maybe if Cody's not a champion, then maybe it's Cody and Cena versus the Bloodline if it's still going on. I almost think them teaming up in a match would make more sense than them facing each other. Cena does not need to pass the torch to Cody. Passing the torch to a Javon Evans lightly, obviously that's two total different spectrums, but that does more for Javon Evans than Cena versus Cody does for really anybody, in my opinion.
In a weird way, I look at this and think the opposite when it comes to Cena and Theory. I know
Mm,
absolutely nobody really would care for it after how the first iteration went. I almost need kind of whether it be a rematch, whether it be Theory has gone face that they've been teasing, and by the time Cena gets around, Theory is this white meat baby face, and he teams with a Cena, his idol. My Siri just went off. Keep saying Cena. Um, whether it be they team together, or whatever. I need something to almost like bury that for me because it just
mm-hmm.
feels like such a failed moment. And I love Theory, and I really do think
Yes.
Theory is a top guy in the future. I know people rag on the solo beating him and then almost never winning a match again. The Theory one like sticks with me. I need something from Cena and Theory where they make do. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they have to face each other again, but it feels like there's some fixing that needs to be done from that.
Yeah, I could see even again maybe a big babyface theory, maybe getting a helping hand from a Cena to winning a title or a match. Maybe they have some sort of altercation where they work it out, and maybe that helps get Theory over. I do want to briefly touch on Theory and go on record to say that both of us are big Theory fans. Never slept on Theory, and I want all the C2 Wrestling fans to know this. We, for years, it's on record in texts, DM chats, everywhere of us loving Theory from day one. Never slept on Theory. So when Theory is the most over guy in the company in a few years, the world champion, just know we were right. Okay. There's a little bit of a time frame there around that Cena match where people were really hating on Theory, man. Theory was getting a lot of unrightful hate for being in the spot he's in. He is a fantastic wrestler, fantastic promo, fantastic look. I get it. The Money in the Bank win, the push, it was a little forced. It was that last Vince thing. It's over now. We're under this Triple H regime. Cena versus Theory, running it back. I'm on board.
I almost feel like to me that's a tag match because
Very
Theory's
well could be.
probably
Yep.
going to be a face by then,
Yes.
and I it feels like it writes itself where Cena has publicly said multiple times he didn't believe Theory. He just didn't believe what he was saying. He's not believable.
Mm-hmm.
And Cena to come back and whether it be help Theory, face Theory, team with Theory, whatever, and him just giving a promo of like, I believe in you now. Like I believe
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like that would do wonders.
Wonders. Yeah. Wonders. I do. You said tag match, and immediately comes to my mind is Cena and Theory versus heel Waller and Miz. Like that almost just writes itself to a point. Again, it's not maybe the WrestleMania Cena match we're gonna get, but we got 50 matches, maybe 50 matches, 40 dates, 50 dates, maybe 40 matches. That could happen. You really never know. You never know.
Look, we've touched on the beginning of the farewell tour. We've touched on the potential of him winning a title, all the potential feuds throughout this final year. We know specifically his last appearance. He has said he will come out in a suit. He will lay the jorts down. It'll be his first time in the ring in a suit instead of in his typical jorts and Jordans or whatever, shoes, Skechers, whatever. The question is, how does this end in the ring? We know the final appearance is him, you know, giving that promo, his thank you, his farewell. We know we'll see his face again, but for being a wrestler, he's officially done. How does it end? Does he face an up and coming guy? Does he face an Orton? What do you think is the most logical end to this farewell tour?
I think, man, it is tough because I think there's a few logical ways. I think what's logical and what I want and what I think are going to happen are maybe all different. It's maybe a trio of different things going on here. I personally would say I don't need Cena winning that 17th title in his last match and relinquishing it or anything. I don't think that really does anything for anybody. I think it would make more sense to have a Cena put over maybe a Braun breaker in that final match, but also, man, for like one last time, Cena Orton, that could also just close out the farewell tour like as a great go home match for Cena. After that match ends, seeing Cena and Orton stand up in the ring, hug it out, raise arms together, man, that would go wild for me. I think that would be maybe the best way to do it. I know earlier I said Cena Orton is the Mania match for me, but first match back or last match back, it can work either way.
I know we both are similar where we don't like to compare AEW and WWE. They are just two completely different companies. But I'm going to do it for a second in talking about AEW's handling of Sting's farewell, where I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was actually very cool that Sting went out on a win. I
Mm-hmm.
like that they did that. And I feel like if there was ever a guy deserving of that, Sting is that guy. And the match was fun. Where it was an issue was he went out as the tag team champion. Again, cool. But what does it do for your company then after that? They immediately go into a tournament. The Young Bucks win it, the team that Sting defeated, and it's been regarded as one of AEW's worst title reigns because it
Mm-hmm.
immediately wasn't as legitimate because they lost to the team that were the champions and just gave them up. So when it comes to Cena's farewell tour, there's a big piece of me that wants to see him go out on top, but that doesn't mean he has to go out with a title. And I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned before that I don't need to see a Cena title run. It'd be cool to see. I wouldn't be against it, but if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't lose any sleep. I think Cena, I would love for him to go out on a win. I really
Mm-hmm.
do. And I know people might not like that, but I think this is where he beats, if it's not Orton, it's an AJ Styles or it's a Seth Rollins or a CM Punk. It's a name that losing to Cena, they've lost to him before. It doesn't mean
Not
nothing,
for
but it
anybody.
means nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't
It's
hurt them at
not
all.
exactly a loss to Cena throughout the entirety of this farewell tour, especially that final match, hurts nobody. It's not going to put a damage on anybody's record. It does nothing. It could hurt like the history and trajectory of a title if they were to have Cena win and relinquish or retain a title in that final run and relinquish. That doesn't really add up to me. I think there's a lot of avenues. I really think there's a lot of ways to go. And, we've talked about a lot over this podcast just about potential matchups Braun Breaker, Gunther, Orton, Punk. And we named a lot of great matchups, a lot of oddballs, maybe in Dom and Javon Evans, but more so, pretty much predictable stuff we talked about. With that said, this era of wrestling lately, we're going to get some surprises through this run. We can talk all we want about what we want to happen, what we think is going to happen. A lot of it will there's going to be a couple in there that are going to surprise us big time. And that's really what I'm looking forward to the most. Cena, you said it earlier. We grew up on him, man. He's the GOAT. He really is the GOAT. I can't wait to see Cena on TV all the time. This entire farewell tour, popping me out of my seat. I'm going to be standing up cheering. I'm looking forward to those surprises most. I just can't wait to see it happen. January, Netflix Raw. That's the start. He'll be there. He's already said he's going to be there. I want that open challenge, man. I want to start it off hot. It's going to end hot. I don't know what they're going to do. There's so many opportunities. It just, you can never really predict it.
You mentioned this name, and before we wrap up, I do need to mention him in the crop of there most likely will be one more match between them, and there kind of has to be. The Miz does need one final match with Cena. And
Yes.
like you said, not everybody is going to get a match with Cena. There's going
Mm-hmm.
to be names that get left off, but there's certain names where even as a one off, just their history and what Cena means to them or they mean to Cena, it's necessary essentially. And
Absolutely.
I'm not sitting here saying you got to bump a younger guy who could use it for one of these guys who don't, but this could just be a year long nostalgia run. Who knows? I'm going to be like, it is can't miss TV every
Mm-hmm.
single episode. I'm just more worried about how much I'm going to cry for when that final Cena promo happens. Because if you want to talk about, I mean, look, you know we're closer to 30 now than we are 20. We're nowhere near the childhood days, but this is literally like our late childhood, early teen years. Like this is our guy,
Mm-hmm.
his farewell tour, and selfishly, I hope it's not like how Flair, how Hogan, they just kept coming back, kept getting that one more match, whatever.
Foley.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The big names that people grew up on, hopefully it's more kind of like how Stone Cold was for those people who grew up
Mm-hmm.
on Stone Cold. It's just an end. And
Yeah.
you get to have that like, I know the ride is officially over, but man, what a ride it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna enjoy going on Peacock or Netflix or whatever to rewatch all my favorite moments because this is gonna hurt, man. I can't even imagine what the tickets will be for that final show.
Oh yeah, it's going to be outrageous, and it's going to be great and emotional and everything included. I really don't know. I don't know how I'm going to feel during all this. There's going to be highs and lows through it all. Great times, bad times, but it's also, as Cena would say, the time is now. It's time. How much more do we really need out of John Cena? I don't need to see John Cena wrestling in 2030. It doesn't need to happen. You got to call it quits at a point. And as you just said, just before I wrap it up, I'm going to hit you with one more follow up question. The end of this tour ends in December. It's going to end with a Cena match. He said he's going to come out in a suit, hand the jorts over, put him on the mat, end his career. Do they officially end this John Cena farewell tour with a 2026 Hall of Fame induction?
That's a great question. I mean, you're looking at Mania 42 at that point. Probably. See, now I was about to say yes, but then I started thinking, Hollywood, the schedule immediately becomes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to be free 4 months after that final show? I mean, look, Batista still hasn't had his induction because he's just been busy every single time it's Mania season.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it's a guarantee that Cena would be free after taking what we would assume is a year off from
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood. I would assume this has been obviously in the works probably since before Mania 39, when he first truly became part time, when he
Yeah.
started getting all these roles, probably penciled out this year, nothing, blah, blah, blah. But man, he is doing so much now in Hollywood that it wouldn't surprise me if after this break, it's like we don't see him for 2, 3 years and then it's finally his induction. Same thing that happened with The Rock. Just when you get that big and busy, it's tough to
Well,
find the time.
I do completely agree with that assessment. Where I will kind of counter it a little bit is to say that Cena will be available at Mania 41. I think you start the farewell tour with his Hall of Fame induction and you have him ride that whole year out as the Hall of Famer. I think if you do this year long Cena farewell tour, and then you have like a 3, 4 month buffer where he retires and he's not around, and then, oh, we're doing a whole Cena tour again because he's going into the Hall of Fame. It's a little weird. You do this whole tour, you wait 3 or 4 years. It's maybe not as big as it could have felt because this whole year of Cena is going to be so huge. I think you start off the year, put him in the Hall of Fame, Mania 41, Vegas. How does it get bigger than that?
And Mysterio going into the Hall of Fame while still being
Exactly.
pretty much active has set the precedent that we should give these guys their flowers before they're like, look, Rey Mysterio is a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
What's the point in waiting 3, 4 years for him to retire and then
Mm-hmm.
giving him that honor? It doesn't hurt to just give it to him now.
Yeah.
It's not like he's got 15 years left of his career. I
Yeah.
mean, look, Seth Rollins is the future Hall of Famer. I'm not saying put him in next year when he's still going to be around for the next 5 to, however many
Mm-hmm.
years. Cena, is done. If there was ever one that makes the most sense to do it this way, it's Cena, and it's this aspect. I bring it back to you though.
Mm-hmm.
We had Taker go in, and he basically had essentially what now is like his one man show, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you do Cena's? Is it is it a smaller class? Cena is the headliner, and you have the hour long, you know, clear the ring. John Cena's got a headset on, and he's just going to talk until he doesn't want to talk anymore.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think Cena's Hall of Fame induction, let's say it's Mania 41. I think it's at most a 4 person, maybe a team's in their induction. Maybe we get a female, we get some other, I don't know, Coco Beware. He might even be in the Hall of Fame. I have no idea.
I think he is.
He probably is. I think he is as well. We get a tag team of sorts, and then we get, John Cena. I could totally see them doing that. Taker, John Cena, those are the two maybe most deserving names of all time of just give them the entire Hall of Fame. Shouldn't be anybody else inducted that year. But I think we do see it at 41. I think that's where they should do it. I'm looking forward to it. Not only the Hall of Fame induction, but the entirety of the farewell tour. A lot of great content, though, not only coming from John Cena from the WWE, but also from your boy Chris and your boy Chris, C2 Wrestling. We just put out a bunch of videos over the last couple of days. Lucha Bros coming to WWE. We got some more reviews coming out as well. Check us out. TikTok, Twitter, C2 Wrestling. Shut us down for the night, Chris.
Oh yeah, the videos will keep on coming. Post Raw, post SmackDown, news breaking, podcast reviews, you name it. We might even get funky and do something in person at some point. You never know. The only way to know is to be subscribed, hit that bell, turn on notifications so you know every time we post. Ring the bell for us, ring the bell. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a like. If you're on Apple, Spotify, 5 stars, review, share it, all that. Hop on our socials, get to messaging. We just want to talk wrestling with everybody, with the lads. That's all we want. Is
With
that
the
so much to ask?
lads.
I think the best way to enjoy this John Cena farewell tour is with other wrestling fans.
The John Cena salute to close us down. C2 Wrestling. We'll see you next time.